So those of you who know me know that this right here really gets under my skin. Hello, my name is Kyle and welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about an article that I came across on Fox News that I just had to talk about here. It's kind of humorous, it's kind of sad, and in some ways, a little bit scary. I'll explain that in a second here. It's from Kyle Morris, and it's entitled 1619 Project author Nikole Hannah-Jones falsely claimed that the Civil War began, not ended, in 1865. Of course, we all know the Civil War began in 1861. And so right off the bat, you'll say, hey, Kyle, you know what? You just made a mistake. 1865 is an easy mistake to make. 61, 65, no big deal. And I would agree with you for the most part. However, when I saw the byline here, it says Hannah-Jones later said her tweet was poorly worded. Poorly worded. What does that mean? Just say I made a mistake. Poorly worded. Okay, no, you made a mistake. There was nothing poorly worded about that. You were wrong. Okay, now again, you may say I am petty. I'm going to show you the entire tweet she made and show you inside of that the word she's saying and how it's anti-American, dishonest. It's the same type of wording and verbiage that is wrong, that's getting into our classrooms, that's undermining everything about our society and here in America, especially on the West. And they're using it as a battering ram to bludgeon us into submission so that we cannot speak out, we cannot talk because we are inherently racist. That's exactly what CRT means. That's exactly what the 1619 Project is about, which is what she is the author of. Let's get into that real quickly. I didn't mention that, but she is the author of the 1619 Project. It was a series of New York Times articles which essentially said, in a nutshell, that America was founded racist from the very beginning, or, the Declaration of Independence, way back at the foundings of Plymouth and of Jamestown. Jamestown was the one at 1619. Now, right here is a very disingenuous statement because they never really mentioned the settlement at Plymouth, and there's reasons for that. I'm working on a video with a group on YouTube called Red Liberty Media. I'm a correspondent with them, contributor with them, working on a video with them to talk about the foundation of this country, going back to 1619 and those settlements, what actually happened, and the full narrative that's never talked to you about by these people because they don't want you to know the whole truth about the country and its foundation at all. So if you are a member of this channel, you click the join button below. There's an actual video there to show you how you can become a member of this channel. If not, once Red Liberty Media posts that video, it'll be available. But if you are a member of this channel, that will be available for you as soon as I complete that. There's one that I've done right now that hasn't been posted yet. It's online right now. You can go see it for yourself, but that should post this week. Either way, it's up to you. Point being is, I've been studying this quite extensively for the past month or so. And I'm telling you right now, there's so much information that's not being told to America that could get us out of the hole we're in now. It could bring this country together. Let people know that we are not an inherently racist country. Far be it from that. So far from that. But yet, watch the words here that she has here in this particular statement. She tweeted, "We did not stop the expansion of slavery." That's a lie. We did stop it. America was the first country to implement the end of the slave trade. It came into effect in 1808. I have it right here. This is the slave trade that was ended in 1808. Now, some will say, well, Great Britain stopped it in 1807. Well, they voted against it in 1807, but it didn't get into effect nationwide until much later, after America did theirs. So, point being, America did stop the expansion of slavery. And she goes on to say, and enslavers dominated the presidency. Well, is that true? Well, I don't really think so. Here's a list of all the presidents who owned slaves, and most of these are Federalists, Whigs, and Democrat Republicans, going out to Andrew Jackson, which is the 7th president, which, by the way, he mentions the Supreme Court here as well. Well, Andrew Jackson's Supreme Court was the Supreme Court that essentially gave us Dred Scott, one of the worst court rulings in the history of the U.S. I would say Roe v. Wade is worse, but it was bad. The people in that particular decision, they were, for most part, Andrew Jackson appointees. Did a video on that 3 years ago. I'll leave a link above on that. The Dred Scott case. We go through those jurors and who they were and who they voted for, and there's that. And so the rest of these guys, you see here, the 13th and 14th and 15th and 16th were not slaveholders. In fact, the 16th was Lincoln, so we can stop there. But his vice president, Andrew Johnson, was a Democrat. We'll talk about him. The rest of these were Democrat-minded politicians, okay? And so if they were, in fact, enslavers, well, they were enslavers of the party that you support and the Senate. And I didn't look at the Senate, but I'm sure that falls in the same line because Republicans didn't start until Lincoln. So again, if you're going to blame enslavers, you're not going to touch the party that actually was the ones pushing it forth. And so she just wouldn't do that. All right, so let's go here. She says here, until 1865, when the North was reluctantly drawn into a war that ultimately ended slavery. She says here, reluctantly drawn into war. Hold on to that. It goes on to say here, it was poorly worded. I meant 1865, ended the war, which the North had been reluctantly drawn into. Is it true that the North was reluctantly drawn into? Well, maybe so, but why is that? It's because there was a war against the United States, and it was a fight for slavery. And I know many people will disagree with that, but if you go and look at the actual documents, you go back and look at the actual addresses for secession, they were talking about leaving for the states' rights to contain and own slavery, expansion of slavery, going out west. That was a big issue. And so it's really undeniable, but at the same time, we can agree that we're talking about Southern Democrats and Northern Democrats who wanted to maintain the institution of slavery. That was what it is. But they never called it both sides. You always want to put it at white people or Republicans, but they'll never ever say it was a Democrat party, because if they do that, then people realize, hey, well, the parties, maybe they didn't switch. They'll give you that paradigm that it did switch, which it absolutely did not switch. People who comment on my videos all the time say, hey, Carl, the party switched and here's why. And they have no reasons, especially when you point them to the actual documents and the actual ideology, which hasn't changed from today. We have an urban plantation to back then we had a agrarian plantation. The mindset is still the same, okay? It's free labor, it's free votes, it's whatever it is, so that they can keep the power for themselves and the money for themselves and the influence for themselves and the stature for themselves. All this is about is a class warfare at the highest level, and it goes into spiritual warfare as well, but we'll talk about that on another video. So he goes on to say, says, last week, Anna Jones stated that the American people will not willfully work to confront anti-blackness in society. Anti-blackness. I don't even know how to begin to talk about that kind of statement. He goes on to say that they have been taught the history of a country that does not exist. See, these people want to go back in time, like in the Terminator or Back to the Future, to basically reinvent history so that they can not have to worry about, all this stuff. They can just say, well, history says this. We can deal with the statues, we can deal with the textbooks in a much easier manner, because we can just explain it away, saying, well, it was always racist. So no matter what you see behind, in the textbooks that say the opposite, it doesn't matter, because at the very beginning, that was a racist foundation, and it has never stopped being racist. And that is why they're doing this, because it's easier on their part to reinvent history, to go back in time like Marty McFly, with the Terminator, to go back to stop something in the past so they can correct their future and make it much easier on them in terms of miseducation and all of those sorts of things. It's the same thing we saw with statues coming down and all of that. It's the same sort of thing, the communist revolution in China, where they basically got rid of all the culture, all the history, because they want to replace it with their own vision of the world, which is a Marxist society, communist society. It's really clear as that, guys. She goes on to say here, we've been taught the history of a country that does not exist. She goes on to that. She says, we've been taught the history of a country that renders us incapable of understanding how we get an insurrection against democracy in January 6th. Well, first of all, we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. Big difference between that. And I'll leave the other part to its own video. I'm not going to talk about that. Goes in here, says the New York Times 1619 Project is a long-form collaboration that seeks to reframe the country's history by bringing slavery and racism to the forefront of the national narrative. It was led by Hannah Jones, who won a Pulitzer Prize for commentary last year for that project. And so, look, this woman is not even a professor. She recently claimed not to be a professor educator despite holding a tenured post at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Even went on to say he doesn't understand why parents have a say in their kids' education. And so I'm going to leave that right there. I've given you enough information. But when you see this sort of thing, and you see her trying to correct herself, but at the core of it, she is disingenuous. She ignores the truth, the whole truth. She ignores the parts of it that implicate her party, Democrat Party, by pushing forth a bigger picture of just white people. And just so they can use it again as a battering ram to cause people to feel guilty, lied, and to succumb to whatever they want. It shuts down debate. It shuts down discussion. It makes it so easy for them to talk to you on their narrative. And anytime you come back against them, they just call you a racist, and then they can win the argument, shut you down because you're too scared to actually combat it. So we talked about this many times on this channel, but I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on this statement that the war began in 1865? Well, I could say in some ways it did, because the Democrat Party waged war on the South, and in some ways it did start in 1865, especially if you consider Reconstruction and how the Democrat president, Andrew Johnson, after Lincoln's assassination, did nothing. He didn't do anything to push forth the agenda of Lincoln in terms of Reconstruction, of bringing the country together, of giving blacks, a fair shake after they've been in bondage for almost a century, and then, bringing the southern states into the fold without having malice towards them. Okay, charity to all and malice to none, which Lincoln mentioned in his second inaugural address. All of that was kicked to the curb with Democrat Southern sympathizer Andrew Johnson, who actually was impeached for his inaction, and then allowed the rising of the Ku Klux Klan. There were skirmishes, there were hangings, there were all kinds of bad things going on during Reconstruction, up until Ulysses S. Grant, a Republican president, put a squash to that, destroyed the Klan, only to be allowed to rise up again thanks to another Democrat president, Woodrow Wilson. So in some ways, Miss Hannah Jones' Civil War did start 1865 because the Democrat Party continued to wage war on the South, on blacks, and abolitionist whites. So again, what are your thoughts on this? If you like what we do on this channel, we take topics like this, culture, politics, and we filter to you in a conservative manner, please check out some more content that we have for you right here.